Let's travel back to 1999, Dreamcast, Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1. I'll take more of these remakes. Shadow Man is a game that came out originally on the Nintendo 64. There was a Dreamcast port, it was delayed, and then a PlayStation 1 port as well. And this was right around the time when developers were starting to push stories and characters and worlds, and they were extremely limited in the technology that they had, but they weren't limited in their creativity and their scope. And you got games like Soul Reaver and games like this, Shadow Man. So this is a remake, and of course it's using the graphics engine from those days, so everything looks like a PS1 game, but you get next generation graphical techniques, shadows, frame rate, stuff like that, ambient occlusion. But I think that if you're somebody who's interested in where the beginnings of really great story and characters and games came from, this is something that you'll enjoy, because it shows you the ambition that they had even back then, and they really had to work hard to create worlds and use a lot of shortcuts to get them to work with the limited hardware that they had. So here we are in Shadow Man, and again, it's the PlayStation 1 texture quality and polygon count, so you're seeing a lot of those flat edges, and of course they've got those hands that are sort of, the fingers are glued together. There's no independent motion in the fingers, and it's funny to look back at this, it really is. But what's really great is that it still has that sense of wonder and immersion, and if you went from the 32-bit era to the 64-bit era, this was a big deal, right? You had these worlds and these characters, and everything felt alive, and you can explore and sort of just immerse yourself in it. So let's just look around here, check everything out. Look at those textures right there on the wall there. Again, it's been such a long time, I have no idea where I'm going or what I'm doing. So I'm looking like I can't get up there. Let's head back. Maybe we can make that jump if we, I don't know what I'm doing here, just trying to figure out the controls. What's great about this is there's a lot of different settings with this remaster. You can pretty much take all the graphical effects off and play the original as it looked, or you can add, you know, higher textures and ambient occlusion and better shadow maps, stuff like that. This is the full boat. This is the highest graphical settings for this game. I'm playing it on the Xbox Series S. Let me see if I can get up there. I don't think I can get up there from here. I'm probably missing a path, and this is one of those limitations right back in the day. All the edges are so flat that you sort of miss where you're supposed to go, so you really have to do a lot of exploring. Let me head back here. I probably have to loop around and then jump over that bridge. It's right around here, and we'll hang a right. What's really odd is on the left stick is strafe, and the right stick is move forward and backwards, and also left and right. So there's a combination that's kind of hard to get used to here, but once you do, it's not too bad. But when you think this is essentially a Nintendo 64 era game, PlayStation 1 era game, it's really fun to go back and play these. This is 20 bucks. Not too bad. Look at that. Not a bad looking game, right? Back in the day. I love the idea that they really were pushing things back in the day. I think in a way that they're not now. Some developers do, but there was really this push when it became 3D and the worlds were larger and the stories became bigger. And it didn't matter what hardware they had. They didn't make excuses. They just made whatever they wanted to make. And if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. Again, this era gave rise to games like Soul Reaver. This is one of those games that they reference a lot when they reference Soul Reaver. Not because it's as good as Soul Reaver, because it isn't, but because it's that sort of supernatural world where you have a lot of exploration and platforming and puzzle solving and combat. Look at that animation. Woo! High-end quality right there. All right. Some reflections in the water at least. I will hop down here and continue exploring. So essentially, you're the Shadow Man. You straddle the line between the living and the dead, and you have this sort of voodoo power to be able to do that. Not War and Peace, but it's pretty entertaining. Look at that edge right there. You can't even see it. It's only marked by these like flat textured vines to let you know you can grab onto a ledge. The good old days. Here's some Rottweilers just staring at the door there. We have to go in there. Let's just explore around the back here. Check it out. Just giving you just a basic look at this game. It's great. It's great to go back and have that experience, and remember what it was like when this was like high end. This was something that was, you know, that wowed you when it came out. I remember playing games like this and the 3D push, the 3D era, and it was just, you know, this was new back then. You never saw anything like this. So looking at it now and comparing it to some of the bigger games, you can still see that DNA when it comes to action adventure games. They haven't changed much, and really any way other than presentation and graphics. Let's head in here. And no load times, just right in. Pretty cool, right? And we'll talk to Nettie. Look at those hands. The fingers are glued together. Animations look great, don't they? It's great to look back though, right? They had no hardware to push. This is the limit that they had, and they just went for it, and I love that about those games of that era. What they did have was great creativity, imagination. The stories were good. The characters, some of the characters were really good out of that era as well. They put all the polygon work into her chest there, and I thank them for it. So this is Shadow Man. Again, nothing too amazing here other than just a really old school action adventure. It doesn't hold your hand. A lot of exploration, a lot of story, and I think that if you're a fan of this type of game, and I am, it's great to look back and to sort of compare and contrast with what we have now. I think in some ways this game does a lot of things better than games do now, and of course there are ways where things have gotten much better, but it is interesting to look back and play these games, especially if you haven't. And if you started gaming on the Xbox, the original Xbox, then you would not have played this game because it came out in 1999 and it released on the N64, the Dreamcast, and the PlayStation 1. It never made it to the Xbox, I don't believe. It did make it to Windows on the PC. So now we're going to transport to the Shadow world, where we have sort of dual powers. And in this world, we have a gun that shoots bullets. In the Shadow world, the gun shoots this sort of ethereal projectile. We use the bear here that's linked to a child to travel between worlds. Again, if you want to get this game, I'm not going to ruin the story for you. So let's head to the Shadow world. And here we are in the Shadow world, and graphically things look really good. Right? And look at the fire there. You have to be willing to sort of put away the advancements that we have now and look back at what was high-end back in 1999, especially on console. But the creativity here is really good. The characters are really interesting and funny, and essentially the gameplay, again, is just exploration and combat and puzzle solving. But there is no holding your hand, and it takes a lot of backtracking and sort of just feeling your way through each level. You look at the reflections on the water. Obviously those weren't there in 1999 on the PlayStation 1, and a lot of the shadows and the texture quality has been improved. That wasn't there either. Let's head on up, take a look around, and some souls should pop out of the water here if I remember correctly. And yep, now we can shoot those obviously and get health. I'm gonna run around, just progress on through the level. So essentially it's just light platforming and combat and feeling your way through the level. Again, that left stick is strafe. It takes a lot to get used to with the right stick. You look at those flat edges. We have no idea where like the hallway ends and where you're making a left or a right. It's a pretty cool character right here. So essentially this is Shadow Man. If you're a fan of old games and seeing where they came from, I would recommend trying it out. It is $20. I don't think it's that high of a price to keep you away from it. And if you've never played games in those eras, I would suggest giving them a look, giving them a try. And I like looking at the way things used to be and then comparing them to the way things are now. Sometimes, especially with modern RPGs, I think a lot of the RPGs of the past are much better than the modern RPGs, and kind of think that way when it comes to action adventure games, although I do think that some have pushed it even further. But I would like Soul Reaver to be one of those games that's remastered. This is sort of an obscure game that a lot of people loved, but I don't think many people knew about, and I think Soul Reaver would be a much better choice to reintroduce to this generations of gamers, especially ones who haven't even played that series before. It is absolutely amazing. But let me know what you think in the comments section below about Shadow Man. Are you going to check it out? Have you played it? Did you play it back in the day? I kind of dabbled with it back in the day, but there were a lot of other games around that time that I wanted to play. So let me know what you think. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, maybe even subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate that. It'd help me grow. And I'll see you in the next video.